Welcome to Podcasting for Business Owners. I'm your host, Laura McRae, a podcast consultant, educator, and self-confessed podcast nerd. If you're thinking of launching a podcast or want to grow the one you have, you're in the right place. Hold on to your headphones and let's go. Welcome back to another episode of Podcasting for Business Owners. Today we have a fantastic guest joining us, Kryshla from Shall We Social. Kryshla is a seasoned content marketing coach, podcaster, and busy parent who has a wealth of knowledge to share about multi-channel marketing. In our conversation, she talks about the importance of diversifying your content strategy, the power of repurposing content, and future trends in digital marketing. If you're looking to broaden your reach and future-proof your podcast, this episode is packed with actionable tips just for you. Hello, Kryshla, and welcome to the show.
Hello. It is lovely to be here on your podcast, Laura. This is such a treat, and I feel absolutely honoured to be here with you today.
Oh, thank you. I'm honoured that you said yes. I'm delighted to have you on the show. Kryshla, you were solely an Instagram coach when we first met, and now you've switched things up in your business and you're a multi-channel marketing coach. What exactly is multi-channel marketing?
Well, really, it's essentially not putting all of your marketing eggs in one basket and having that broad approach to your marketing where you are showing up on multiple channels, you're trying different things, different content types, so that you can connect with different audiences. Because as much as, we're in the marketing space or in the content creation space, and we tend to be on every single platform, not everybody is like us. And so I think it's really about taking that opportunity to diversify your marketing so that you can have a greater impact across multiple channels. Now, Laura, that this whole journey about multi-channel marketing came about because I lost my Instagram account, not once, but twice. Thanks, Instagram, for that. And it was devastating at the time. I was absolutely gutted. The first time it happened was on day one of my Instagram course launch. And the imposter syndrome that I felt from that, an Instagram coach selling an Instagram course loses her Instagram account for no reason. It just happened. And I was fortunate I got it back. But at the time, I was devastated. It had a really negative impact on that particular course launch. And what I didn't know at the time was this was actually a pivotal moment in my business where I would change my approach to being all in on Instagram and instead diversifying. And so I hope that your listeners can learn from my heartbreak and future-proof their business. That's really what we're doing here by diversifying, by having a presence in multiple locations.
Oh, God, that would have been devastating, yeah.
Oh, it was horrid.
Yeah, so it's important to not put all your eggs in one basket and spread out the media as much as you can.
Absolutely. And it's a hard lesson to learn, I think, because when we first start out, we may be very time poor, especially if you're running your business as a side hustle, or you just may not know how to utilize all the platforms yet. And so you're a bit scared to try some of these other platforms, but take it from someone who has lost their account. You need to have a presence on at least a handful. And we can talk about that in a bit more detail and how to do that without burning yourself out.
Yeah. So how can we as podcasters make the most of multi-channel marketing to reach a broader audience and grow our podcast visibility?
Well, first of all, you're already doing it by having a podcast, because I would say pretty much everybody who is listening to your podcast has a podcast, to grow their business, to get more clients or customers. You've probably got a social media presence as well. And boom, there you go. You're multi-channel marketing without even realizing it. But as I said before, different people like to consume content in different ways and on different channels. So I think it just really makes sense to diversify your marketing and to utilize all these different options and formats that we have available to us. So if we look at things like Instagram Reels, we look at TikTok, we look at YouTube Shorts, or just YouTube for longer form content. That's all very video-based content, right? Then you've got things like your blog posts. Then you've got your podcast, which is audio. So there's lots of different ways I think that we can present our content that are going to align with people's preferred consumption and learning styles. Also, I think it's really important that we note that platforms change over time. So back in 2016, back in the olden days, Instagram used to be considered a kids channel for like 16-year-olds. Yeah. Think about what Instagram is now. It is probably the number one platform for business owners, the go-to social media platform for those wanting to promote their business. Pretty much everyone I've worked with has set up their business, they've got their username, they've made a logo, and then they go straight to Instagram to start promoting that business. So it's definitely not a kids platform, but in the beginning, we were sharing those really grainy, over-filtered photos of our lunch on Instagram. Remember the heydays? Likewise with TikTok, And some people still think TikTok is a kids dancing app. It is not. There are so many business accounts absolutely killing it on there. But again, it wasn't always like that. So I think it's really important to look at these platforms, look at maybe where they're headed as opposed to where they are now. And remember that young audiences who are on some of these platforms, such as TikTok, could be your future customers or clients. So it's definitely worth embracing those.
Yeah, I must admit, I still haven't embraced TikTok yet. I've dabbled in it, but I'm still not there yet.
Look, and you don't have to. There's no rules about which platforms you use other than let's find a platform that your audience or your target audience is actually on. So if they're not on TikTok, don't go set up a TikTok account just because I said so, right? You know your audience best. You know where they like to hang out and consume media. But also, it may be worth having a small presence there in case the focus of that platform suddenly changes, as it has done with TikTok in particular. And I'm sure this will be having the same conversation in years to come about other emerging platforms. One final thing I think that's really worth considering, and again, this is, TikTok sparked this little brainwave here, but let's think about search engine optimization. Now, people are always banging on about SEO and how important it is, but social media platforms are now really taking search seriously. I've been saying for a few years, I think hashtags are going to be gone. Social media platforms won't be letting us index the content. And algorithms, as we know, are getting much, much smarter. They're able to determine what your content is about through looking at the image, the alt text, listening to what it is that you're saying, plus all the written information that you give on your posts, such as your captions, text on screen, closed captions, etc., etc. So search is getting so much smarter. But also consumer behavior is changing around search. So I think there was a stat that came out at the start of this year, 2024, that said 40% of Gen Z and millennials go and search on Instagram or TikTok before they go to Google.
Wow.
And, I've noticed I do that myself now for a number of things. So say I want to find somewhere nice to go for dinner in Melbourne. I will often jump on TikTok and I'll search for Melbourne restaurants or Melbourne cafes or something like that, because then I can watch the video. It's a lot richer experience with what you're served as opposed to a list of websites that you get out of Google. And so I can see the video footage from these restaurants and bars, and I get what it's going to be like, what I'm going to experience when I get there. And so I think more and more we're going to see this lean towards that type of searching. So if you can optimize your content, sharing your podcasts on these platforms, then I think that's really going to serve you in the long run, like any other search platform would.
Yeah, well, that's really interesting because I also, when I'm looking at business owners, I will look for them first on Instagram before Google.
Absolutely. Me too. And if they don't have a presence there, what do you think?
What are they hiding?
Or are they still in business? Right? Yeah. And so I think this is why having some presence on multiple channels is really going to work in your favor, because if people aren't hanging out on Instagram and say they went to Facebook and searched for you, would they find you there? I know that they would find you, Laura, because I've seen your Facebook page. But the point is, I think it really makes sense to have those different touch points, but you don't have to be, I guess, flogging yourself to have a presence on all of them.
Oh, that's good to hear. I tend to focus my efforts mainly on Instagram, then Facebook, and then LinkedIn. I know I need to be more on LinkedIn, but I really struggle with LinkedIn. I'm never really sure what to put on there. What strategies can we use to identify content that resonates with our audience?
Ooh, you are speaking my language, Laura. You know, I'm all about content strategy. This is my favorite topic. And I just happen to have some ideas for you and your listeners. Now, the first couple of ideas, I'm sure I could hear the eye rolling from here. Yeah. But they have to be said because so many people skip these steps. Yeah. Step one, define your audience. So if you are a business owner and you use podcasting to grow your business, you sell products or services, and this is one of your marketing channels, you need to know who your ideal customer or client is. If you have a podcast just for content creation purposes as like a creative outlet, then your strategy is going to be slightly different. But either way, you need to know who it is that you're talking to so that you can create content that they are going to want to consume. So this involves defining your target audience and really drilling down on their wants, their needs, and their struggles so that you can actually work out, okay, what makes them tick? What things are they interested in? Where else are they hanging out online? Very important. So you can choose those channels. So that's the bare basics. And we all know this. And so I'm not going to talk about this too much. Yeah. If you don't know this already, you can listen to my podcast because we actually have episode 1 of the Mad Marketing Mums podcast is all about defining your audience, defining your customer or client, because this is the basis of every single marketing activity that you do and every single business activity as well. I'm sure you would agree. The next step, and again, I'm going to keep this one high level because we could talk about this for like all day, right? And that is you need to formulate a strategic content plan and go through a really considered idea generation process whereby you are brainstorming ideas based off of what you know about your customer. Yeah, always comes back to them, based off of your own expertise and experience and work that you've done with customers or clients or, you know, people that you've sold to, like all of your customer interactions. You also can spend time collating content that you already have. So if you already have content assets, you know, your podcast is going to become one of those. If you have articles, blog posts, things like that, like all of this can be pulled into that content mix. And of course, researching targeted ideas. And again, it's about aligning what you want to talk about with the questions and things that people are searching for online and pulling that all together as part of this content plan so that you can stay focused, so that people know what it is that you talk about. Lots of people talk about niching, yeah? Really having a niche, defining your content pillars, all of that stuff is just about giving you a sense of focus so you know what you want to talk about and so that your audience knows what you talk about, because otherwise it can get really haphazard. And I'm sure you follow some accounts or you've seen some accounts on Instagram, Laura, where you see the content, you're like, what do they do? I have no idea what they do. And that's because they're just posting up any old random content.
Yeah, I'm a true believer in this, creating like an ideal customer avatar. As much as everyone finds it boring and they hate doing it and they think they know it in their head already, it's a really good exercise to do. And I always get my clients to work out who their ideal listener is before they start their podcast and think about their content pillars, another thing that Kryshla taught me all about, so that you can niche down your podcast so it's targeted at a specific person, because otherwise you're targeting at no one at the end of the day. So it's so important, and so that people understand who you are and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, that's the basics, right? And I say the basics, but it's actually a lot of work. The third part though, and something super practical that your listeners may not have already thought about, And that is to look at the customer journey. So again, I'm really speaking to your podcasters that are using their podcast as a marketing channel to grow their business, whether that be product or service based, doesn't matter. But you need to consider what journey your customer goes through. Now, we know the classic funnel: awareness, consideration, conversion, loyalty, all of that good stuff. Podcasting tends to sit at the top of the funnel, top to middle of funnel, depending on your listener. If you've had listeners, if you've been around for a few years, you might have people who have already purchased from you who are listening. But typically, we're talking top to middle of funnel. And so what we want to do, like with all of our content, is we want to focus on topics, focus on content that is going to move the audience through that funnel, from awareness to consideration, and hopefully some of those people to conversion, to buying from you, to working with you. So if we think about those two top stages of the customer journey, or the funnel, or whatever you want to call it, it doesn't matter. But the first one really is awareness. So this is where you have a cold audience who may not know, like, and trust you yet, right? Which we know is important, because who do you buy from? People you trust. So awareness, when people are in this stage, they might have just discovered you or your business or your niche. It may be the first time they've kind of come across the ideas that you are speaking about. And so they're really in discovery mode. They're finding out more and more about what it is that you talk about the key topics, your core topics, or what it is that you want to be known for. Now, in terms of purchasing from you, they may be problem unaware, or they may be problem aware, but they don't yet know that there's a solution, and of course that you provide that solution. Now, if they don't know they have a problem, they can't seek a solution. So this is why this content is actually really important. So that customer goal, really, again, that's them learning and discovering. Their behaviors include things like searching for information, binging all your TikTok videos, and discovering accounts that talk about the topic that they are now suddenly interested in. And you've done this before, right? You go down like the rabbit hole of consuming content, and then the algorithm learns that you have an interest in it, and it starts pushing you more and more of that content. And so you kind of can really go into a stage where you're just in there binging all of this content from all different people, not just you, And this is also where they are consuming free content. So like I said, watching all your TikTok videos, maybe going over and reading a blog post, listening to podcasts, And so this is really what's happening at that stage. So in terms of your podcast content, we want to be getting their attention in the mix of all those other options for content, because we know how busy the content marketing world is. And then, of course, we want to be attracting the right people to come and consume more of our content, to follow us on social media, to head to our website, again, to take that next step in the customer journey, whatever that looks like. So this type of content is things like content that introduces you and your business and your niche, like the really like what I do for who and why I do this, showcasing your unique personality or your approach. If you have a really special way of doing what it is that you do, this is a great opportunity to talk about that, or to share your thought leadership and your knowledge in your podcast episodes. We also want to make people problem aware, because as I said before, if they don't know that they have a problem, then they can't seek out a solution. And one thing I think that podcasts do really well is they provide quick wins. So people feel like they're gaining a lot of value from listening to a podcast, and they'll come back week in and week out, whatever your cadence is in terms of your podcast production. So that's our awareness stage. And then in terms of consideration, as I said, you might have some people that do already know and like you. They've been around for a while. Maybe they follow you on social media. So you've already kind of got past that first part of the funnel. But again, we still want to be using our content to move them further down the funnel, closer to that point of buying from you, or maybe recommending you to somebody else if they genuinely don't have a need for the thing that you're selling. At this stage, it's really about evaluation. So they are comparing products, services, providers, suppliers, whatever you want to call yourself. They're reading reviews, looking at those testimonials that we all post, yeah? Reading your podcast reviews as well to see if your podcast is worth listening to. Perhaps they're even taking that next step and opting in for your lead magnet. So if you have a free ebook or, I don't know, a webinar or something along those lines, they're going and handing over their email address, which, as we know, is valuable currency in this digital world, in order to get that. So really, at this stage, your content goal needs to be about nurturing that relationship, yeah, and building desire to move to the next step with you. So really tapping into some of those pain points that they have now identified and helping build a desire for that solution. And again, I think this is really, with podcasting, being so powerful because you're sharing your unique voice and perspective and creating that connection. This is, I think, where you can really accelerate this consideration phase. So it's a lot of strategy I just dumped at you, Laura. But I hope that makes sense. And that's, I think, really what you should be considering when you are thinking of what it is you're going to podcast.
Yeah, that's such useful information. So you've been talking about all the different media channels. What are some practical steps we can take to repurpose our podcast episodes into different formats?
Yes, because look, we want to do this and we want to have this presence on multiple channels. But of course, there's only so many hours in the day. Laura and I are both busy parents as well as business owners and podcasters. So I get the need for speed and practical solutions. So there are so many different ways that you can leverage your podcast content for other platforms, for other formats, other placements. So let's look at some written content ideas. So as you know, you can download a transcript from your podcast. There's a number of different tools you can do this. I've noticed Buzzsprout now does this, which is the podcasting host that I use. If not, you could use some other tools if, say, you were recording on Zoom. In fact, Zoom does a transcript now, doesn't it?
I believe so. The one I tend to use is Headliner. That's a good one.
Yes, I've heard of that too. But there's a million of these tools now, right, that can transcribe your episode. So once you've got it to where you want to transcribe that, and then the world is your oyster in terms of repurposing. So you can take that transcription and you can turn it into a blog post. And I'm not going to say and you should also use this as an email to send to your email list. Yeah. You can cut up that transcript, take snippets and use them as written social media captions. You could take some of those words and you could turn them into carousel posts for Instagram. So the ones where you slide through and there's different information on each slide, or you could make them into like social media graphics, Q&A, key lessons, quotes, like a flow chart, a list of ideas. Laura, you could do this right now with this list of ideas and make social media posts. How meta would that be? So that's one way, that you can get a whole lot of written content. Video content, of course, we always think of video, I think, when we're thinking of repurposing. I would highly recommend, and I know you are going to be doing this, and we do this as well for the Mad Marketing Mums podcast, is we record the video and we edit the video and then we take snippets for social media. If you're going to have people there talking, you might as well capture the video as well. And even if you decide not to use it down the track, if something goes wrong, that's fine. You can just use the audio. But I think it's, again, a lost opportunity. Why not turn on the camera? Yes, I know it means you have to look a little bit nicer. You have to take some effort if that's your vibe. If not, you don't have to. But video content is so great for repurposing. You can take this long form piece of content, you can cut it up into little snippets that you share as is on social media. You can also share a little snippet and then have a teaser to go and listen to the entire episode. You can add like a little video of yourself at the start talking about it and then have a few snippets put together. Yeah. You can take the transcript from before and you can pop it into ChatGPT and you could say, hey, write me 10 1-minute long video scripts based off of this transcript that I can then present to camera for Instagram Reels or TikTok or YouTube Shorts or wherever you decide to have a presence. You can create a highlights package with multiple clips from your episodes. You could show like a little slideshow with a bunch of different guests, especially if you ask the same question on every episode. So on the Mad Marketing Mums podcast, I think we missed the first few episodes of doing this, but we've now started asking everybody, what's your number one tip for busy parents in business? Now, we could collate a bunch of those, the best tips, and put them all together and make a longer form video as well. You could put all your bloopers together, because that's really fun, engaging content as well. That's, the life of a podcast. Another thing that you can do is you can repurpose from podcast to podcast. There's a really great podcast that I listen to. I think you'd like this one, Laura. It's called How I Work by Amantha Imber. And what she does, it's really, really interesting. She has these little short, snappy episodes, just quick tips, really practical advice, which I love. Then she has longer episodes where she has these incredible guests. Like she gets really good guests on her podcast. But what she also does, she'll have the full guest interview. You can go and listen to that. And some of these are, 45 minutes to an hour long. But she does these little like quick win, and she titles them quick win episodes. And if you go have a look at her podcast and scroll back 4 or 5, you'll see one there where she takes a snippet from one of those guest interviews, a really good piece of advice. She shares it and then she expands on it and gives her 2 cents on it as well, which I think is brilliant, not only for the sake of repurposing, but also in terms of leveraging what they're saying, but also to present your own thought leadership.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
Yeah, you're not just promoting them and their business and what they do, but it's also positioning you as an expert as well in terms of you taking that information and making it relevant to your audience. So I think that's such a good one to do and easy, right? It's not too hard to do as well. So you could even do it with that particular tip.
Yeah, I think this is something I'm going to do from now on.
Yeah, it's a really good idea. And again, what it means is if you've got a few of these really incredible moments in your podcast and you're like, wow, I really want to share this, not only are you getting more leverage out of that content in terms of, if you've got nothing to post this week, you could create one of these short little quick wins or snippets, or you can come up with a cool name for your own. But it also then drives people back to that original episode. So you can get more views on some of your older content as well, because it's like social media, right? Nobody's going to scroll right back to the beginning. But once you've got a few episodes under your belt, you'll be like, oh, there was a really good one way back here. So I think that's a really natural way of encouraging people to go back and consume that older content.
This is one of the reasons I love podcasting so much, because people think, it takes too much time and effort to do a podcast. But it's actually beneficial because with one episode, you can make so much more content. So you're actually making it easier for yourself, I think, in the long run.
Yeah. And again, it gives you that focus as well for what it is you're going to be talking about, instead of trying to think of like 5 or 6 different social media ideas for the week. If you have a podcast episode coming out, you can be like, okay, at least sort of 3 of them could be related to your podcast. And then you can do some funny, like dynamic content or stuff that taps into a trend or just silly stuff that you want to do in amongst that. But your core kind of business content does have a focus. It does have a bit of a theme that you can lean into as well. And again, just makes it easier in terms of you constantly having to think up content ideas. You've got a bunch of them right there ready to go.
Yeah. Can you share a bit about the systems and workflows you recommend to help us stay consistent with our content creation and repurposing?
Yeah. So again, I'll just give this to you high level because there's a lot you can talk about with each one. And I sort of touched on these before, and that is you've got a couple of options when it comes to your content creation. One option is to go macro to micro. And given that we're talking to podcasters here, that one I feel like makes the most sense. You're already putting this time and energy and effort into planning out your podcast and producing it. So why not take that and then disseminate that into smaller micro content that you can use on social media, that you can put over onto your blog? That might not be so micro, but you know what I mean, right? That's, I think, the most natural way of repurposing your content. But likewise, you can go micro to micro. And this is something that you know that I recommend. Whereas if you're making one piece of content, make two, make three, make a bunch at the same time and create what I like to call a content stockpile. So you've got a bunch of little clips, little videos or short captions or whatever it is you've been creating, a few different versions of the same caption, and maybe you've changed up the hook or the same video. I've done this a few times where you change the introduction. So perhaps one of them, it's just some B-roll footage with the text on it, and then you go into your video. The other one is maybe you talking to camera and verbally saying that hook, or you change up the hooks each time, or there's a bunch of different ways that you can do this. But if you can create multiple versions, not only does it mean you've got all this content sitting here ready to go for a rainy day, and a rainy day might look like poor mental health, being busy with the kids, sick kids, just can't be bothered, going on holiday, all of these things. There's always reasons why we may struggle to be consistent and post. But I think if you can do yourself a favor, make hay while the sun shines, as they say, and just create one or two extra pieces of content every time you create something, then soon you're going to have this huge library of really great, relevant content. So you're not just posting filler content, I say in inverted commas, any old crap, basically. You're posting something that's relevant. And what's also great is there's so many benefits, right? This is great, and this is great, and this is great. But what's also great is it allows you to test different content formats, styles, different ways of presenting those ideas to your audience to see what works and what resonates with them. So many options. You can, of course, go micro to macro, and I've done that before as well. And you could definitely do this with podcasting. So say you put up an Instagram post and it goes absolutely gangbusters. Everyone loves it. They're commenting. You've really tapped into some kind of want or desire that your audience has. You can then take that and flesh it out into a podcast episode, which can then become a blog and an email and more social media content. It goes on and on. So I think deciding where you want to start from, or just being open to going for it with all three, I think is a great way to get going with that. And I would say also lean into your preferred way of creating content. So if you like podcasting, if you like speaking, amazing. Start there. If you like writing, start there and then repurpose that content into other formats. The good thing is there's no hard and fast rules on this. You can do kind of whatever you like.
Yeah, that's one of the questions I ask clients when we meet up for our strategy calls when we're planning content. I ask if there's any social media posts that got a lot of engagement, because then that's going to make a good podcast episode.
Absolutely. Yeah, that that's a hot topic for people, provided that you have the right followers.
True.
Again, that comes back to knowing your audience.
Yes, it's so important to have the right audience. How can we ensure our repurposed content maintains high engagement across all platforms?
Oh, this is a good question. And first of all, I would like to say the same piece of content is not going to perform the same on every platform, and that's okay. Yeah. I've had TikTok videos that have gone viral, and then I pop them on Instagram, crickets, and vice versa. That's just the nature of social media. And there are so many things that are outside of your control. Depends on your audience there. It depends on the time of day you're posting, algorithms, who actually sees your content, whether you get that initial engagement that then tells the platform, yes, push it out to more people. So even the same piece of content may not perform the same. So I think we just really need to get that idea out of our head that that's okay. Because even if one person who is aligned to your ideal customer or client sees it and they go, oh, I'd love to find out more, and they come over and they work their way through that customer journey, well, then it was worth it, even if it only got 10 views. Yeah. So I think let's just start off that conversation there. Of course, there are some tips that I've got because, hello, that's what we're here for. I would say the first thing that you can do is you can create some platform-specific content. So we love repurposing, and reposting is thebomb.com, but it is important to lean into the strengths or the preferences of each platform. So if short videos work best on Reels, but longer videos work better on TikTok, then you can create a longer version for TikTok and then, split that up and have 3 short videos for Reels, or just do one kind of summarized version to go over onto Reels. So that's really comes down to understanding the platform strengths, how they actually operate, and what your audience likes to consume. Some things that I like to do just to make content look native to the platform. So if I am repurposing my video content, for example, or I'm repurposing captions, say I was sharing something from Instagram to Facebook, I'm going to remove the hashtags because that looks like I've just reposted. I don't know why it feels weird that people know that we're doing that, but that's just one thing I like to do. Video content, so vertical video, if I want to share this across multiple platforms, I will create the video, say it's me just talking to the camera. I will hit that down button. I'll do this in stories usually, or Reels. Hit that down button and save a fresh version to my camera roll. Then I will add the text and the closed captions, add the written caption, all of that, and post it. And then I've got this nice untainted version of the video on my phone that I can go share over onto TikTok or YouTube Shorts or even Pinterest. Don't forget Pinterest. And again, add the text into the platform so it looks like it was made in that platform, so it looks native. There's a really good feature on Canva where you can import your Instagram Reels without the watermark. So it means that you can use that content again. Especially good if you posted some Reels a while ago and forgot to save them. You can import them there. You can add them to a new video, download it. And again, you've got that nice fresh version that you can use on other platforms without being penalized, because we know Instagram, for example, doesn't like it if you post a video with the TikTok watermark because they're direct competitors.
Yeah, I remember when this feature came out and you put it on Instagram and I couldn't believe it. And I went and done it and I've been doing it ever since. It's so good for repurposing.
Yeah, and it's a great backup of your content as well, just in case something happens to your account. Yeah. The other thing, of course, you can do is to add, trending sounds, text, etc. on each platform, especially with things like trending sounds. It depends on your account permissions. You might not be able to use the same sound on each platform. So if you're adding them as you upload them, and it only takes a couple of seconds. These are really quick things to do. But again, it just means you can tap into trends or things that are happening on each channel.
So talking of trends, what trends do you see in content marketing specifically for podcasters over the next few years?
So a couple of things I think will be seen. The first is, and some people won't like this, video. Yeah. So I think we're going to see a lot more podcasts as videos. And you sent out an email the other day about how which podcast platform's gone now?
Google Podcast is gone and they want you to put your podcast on YouTube now.
Yep. And I know you can upload just an audio file, but then you're there going, well, why don't I just put up the video? And I think we're going to see a little bit more of that. Likewise, I think we'll see a bit more live streaming of podcast episodes. Now, we had a little play with this, and it's actually, I find we made less mistakes when we were going live because you're forced to just carry on. But depends on your audience. In fact, we made you do it, didn't we, Laura?
We did. The pressure was on.
The pressure was on. Look, and it depends on how comfortable you feel going live. But we know that social media platforms love it when you go live, and it can be a really great way of not just broadcasting into the ether, but instead getting that real-time engagement from people who are watching and answering their questions. And then people will feel a lot more connected to you and your content. I think, you don't have to do it for every single episode. It does take a lot of planning. And for some people, going live can be really stressful. But you might want to do it every so often, or if you've got a special guest who doesn't mind doing that, or a topic that maybe is a little bit controversial and you want people weighing in and sharing their opinions. Or you could do just like a Q&A style session, which is designed for that live audience. So I think we'll definitely see a bit more of that happening. And also, as I touched on earlier, that SEO focus is going to be even more important. So I would recommend that you future-proof your podcast content now by using keyword-rich descriptions and titles, by including those same keywords in the social media posts that you share to promote your podcast so that you can be found on these platforms that are becoming more searched focused. It all ties in together. So having that awareness, and again, it doesn't need to be this huge, big, complicated thing, but ensuring that you sit down and think about, okay, what do I want to be known for? What are some of the key phrases or search terms that people are using around those topics? And then incorporating those into your content. It's as easy as that. Put them in a written caption, put them on screen, say them to the camera, have them in your audio. All those different touch points are going to help algorithms and search engines to find your content.
Yay, you're talking my language.
Yay!
Thanks so much for coming on the show today. You've given us so many tips. You've been so great. So where can we find you and learn more about your services and your amazing podcast, Mad Marketing Mums? I'm a big fan of Mad Marketing Mums. It's a great podcast.
Well, as you just mentioned, that's our podcast, and I co-host that with Clementine Holman. We met on TikTok, became TikTok friends, both mums, and so we decided to start a podcast together, mostly for accountability. It's actually good having a co-host for that reason. So yes, you can absolutely find us over there. Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, we got Threads, all of the channels. You can find me at Shall We Social. Feel free to drop in there. I mostly hang out on Instagram and TikTok. Those are my playgrounds. And if you want some help with your content strategy, with that customer journey mapping piece, that is what I do. That's my jam. You can find out more at shallwesocial.com.au/coaching.
Thank you, Kryshla. And I will put all the links in the show notes, and I highly recommend working with Kryshla. She's been a godsend to me. She's been so helpful, and I wouldn't be where I am today without Kryshla. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura. Look, it helps having a good student. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for having me.
What an incredible conversation with Kryshla from Shall We Social. Her insights on multi-channel marketing really highlight how essential it is to diversify our content strategy and not to rely on a single platform. Her prediction about the growing importance of video content and SEO on social media really got me thinking about how we can evolve our own strategies. I completely agree with Kryshla's approach and can't wait to start implementing some of her ideas. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts and how you plan to diversify your content strategy. Until next time, keep sharing your story and reaching new heights with your podcast. If you found value in this podcast, please leave a 5-star rating, and a review would be even better. Your support shows that this is a good show, which will attract high-profile guests and in turn deliver greater value to you. This podcast is produced and edited by me. Don't waste your time on editing. Let me help you with your podcast. Check out the links in the show notes to get in touch.